Alright, what's going on everybody? Heroic Spring 34 here, and welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Vikings. Now, when we hear the word Viking, we think of plunger, uh, marauder, killer, savage. We just think of all these bad words and all these bad names for Vikings. Well, in actual fact, Vikings, they weren't just raiders and killers. They were also farmers and normal people like all of us. Now, the reason they came to England was because their countries of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark were becoming overpopulated. Clans were fighting against each other for more land, and it just wasn't a good spot for many Vikings to live anymore. So, what they did was they went over to England. Well, what they didn't realize is that the English didn't want the Vikings over there because of their pagan religion and because of their warlike culture. Well, in 879, the first Viking raid was ever recorded, and it was recorded in the Kingdom of Northumbria, which is one of the kingdoms of England. And this raid actually happened on a Christian monastery called Lindisfarne. Many Christian monks were taken prisoner and killed. Their gold and silver was taken and sold. Many of these Christians didn't make it back to Scandinavia. Some of them died of illness on seas like dysentery, starvation. Many of them died because they didn't want to be slaves. Others were forced. Well, all of them were forced because they were captured by the Vikings. But some of them were forced into being, let's say, a Viking house's maid, preparing meals, making their beds, feeding them, doing that sort of stuff, working out in the fields, on the farm, and that sort of stuff. But then some slaves were actually treated fairly decently by the Vikings. Some of them were treated as family. Some of them even were accepted into Viking culture. But we also got to remember it wasn't just the English that were taken into slavery by the Vikings. The Vikings took slaves from all over the world: China, Africa, France, everywhere, Spain, Persia. And not only that, the Vikings, they actually traveled a very, very long distance. By the end of the Viking Age, which was around 970, which is around, well, actually not 970, it was actually around 900, the Vikings actually traveled, well, actually had a whole Viking state in England, which was called Danelaw. Now, this state lasted for about 200 to 300 years, and by the end of all these wars in England, England was divided directly in half. Half of it was England, half of it was for the English, half of it was for the Danes or the Danish Vikings. The other really cool thing that was also the other really cool thing that also happened was during the 1100s, a Viking named of Leif Erikson actually set foot in North America, 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Now, the other interesting thing is that if you go to this chain of small islands off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada, it's called Lonsdale Meadows. Now, you can actually go there, and there's actually ruins from this Viking settlement, and it's actually shown, well, actually proven by two archaeologists, Blue Nelson and another archaeologist named Mike. They actually proven that the Vikings traveled as far as Minnesota, which is pretty freaking cool, if I do say so myself. The last, well, not so much last, but the next cool thing that I think is really cool about not only about Vikings but about my family tree is last year I did an ancestry DNA test. Just figure out, might as well just figure out what my heritage is, because I was told I was Irish, Native American. Well, it turns out when I got my results back, I was 69% Northwestern European. And I started researching more about Northwestern European heritage. Turns out that most of the Vikings settled within the areas like of where my heritage comes from. So, like East Anglia, Northumbria, Wessex, all those areas. Not only that, but up in northern Scotland, like Orkney, a lot of Viking blood up there. Norse Gaels, half Viking, half Celtic. Not only that, it also showed I have roots in Denmark. But one of the other cool things I bet you guys don't know yet is that if you're Irish, you still could have Viking roots. It's actually proven that the Norse Vikings, Norwegians, that Norwegian Vikings or the Norse actually built the capital city of Dublin, Ireland, which I gotta say, that's really freaking cool. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, share it, and now I'm striking out.